I was just driving home when this cop pulled me over for no reason. He thought I was just another...
They say power can make some people blind, but what happens when the law itself gets tested on the side of the road? Imagine a police officer pulling over a car, convinced he's caught just another routine stop. But within minutes, his world flips upside down. This isn't just any driver, it's someone who can rewrite his future with a single decision. Stick with me, because this story will leave you stunned. And if you love true justice stories, don't forget to subscribe for more. It was a quiet afternoon in a small suburban town, the kind of day where nothing unusual was expected to happen. Judge Marcus Hill, respected across the state for his fairness and strong stance on equality, was driving home after finishing a long morning session in court. Dressed casually in a polo shirt and slacks, he wasn't in his black robe of authority. He looked like any ordinary man behind the wheel of his modest sedan. As he turned onto a quiet stretch of road, his mind wandered to the cases he had just overseen, cases where justice had to rise above bias. Ironically, he was about to become part of a scene that would test those very principles. Behind him, flashing red and blue lights suddenly pierced the calm. Judge Hill glanced at his speedometer. He wasn't speeding, his seatbelt was on, and his car was in perfect condition. Still, the patrol car signaled for him to pull over. With a deep sigh, he complied, steering gently to the shoulder. Inside the police cruiser sat Officer Daniels, a man known among colleagues for being overly aggressive during traffic stops. Today, he spotted Marcus's car and without hesitation assumed suspicion. His reasoning wasn't about broken laws, it was about appearance. As Judge Hill rolled down his window, he remained calm, polite, and curious about what reason could possibly justify this stop. But something in the officer's eyes told him this wasn't about a minor traffic violation. This was about something far uglier, something Judge Hill had seen too many times from the bench, but never expected to face firsthand. The stage was set. A man sworn to uphold the law sat in his car, while another sworn to enforce it approached with prejudice in his mind. What happened next would shake both of their worlds. Officer Daniels strutted toward the driver's window, one hand resting on his belt, the other tapping against his holster as if to silently announce control. He leaned down, peered inside, and without even introducing himself muttered, "License and registration." Now. Judge Hill, calm and collected, retrieved his documents. "Good afternoon, officer. May I ask what the reason for the stop is?" His tone was polite, steady, the way he always spoke in court, but Daniels scoffed. "Don't play smart with me. I'll tell you when I feel like it. Just answer my questions." His voice carried an edge, an insult hidden in authority. Judge handed over his license, watching carefully as the officer glanced at it but didn't really read it. Instead, Daniels eyed the car, then the man inside. "This isn't exactly the neighborhood for your kind of driver," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for Marcus to hear. There it was, the trigger. A sting of prejudice laid bare. In the middle of a traffic stop, Judge Hill's eyes narrowed slightly. He had presided over dozens of cases where citizens described the humiliation of such moments, but living it himself was a different story. He knew this wasn't about a broken taillight, speeding, or any legitimate reason. This was about appearance, assumption, and bias dressed up as authority. Still, he kept his composure. "Officer," he said carefully, "I respect the job you do, but I'd like to know why you pulled me over. Was I speeding? Did I break any traffic law?" Daniels smirked. "You fit a description. Suspicious vehicle. That's all you need to know, unless you want to make this harder than it has to. A couple of cars slowed as they passed, drivers turning their heads at the sight of flashing lights on a quiet street. The humiliation wasn't lost on Judge Hill. He wasn't just being stopped, he was being treated like a suspect without reason. Inside the judge's chest, a quiet storm brewed. This wasn't simply an inconvenience. This was a moment where dignity was under attack. And though Daniels had no idea, he had just crossed the wrong man, the kind of man who carried not just authority, but the power of the law itself. Officer Daniels held the license in his hand, but didn't bother looking at the name again. Instead, he leaned closer to the window. "Step out of the car," he ordered sharply. Judge Hill raised an eyebrow. "Step out? On what grounds, officer?" His voice was calm but firm, carrying the kind of tone that made courtroom lawyers tremble. Daniels sneered. "Because I said so. Don't question my authority." For a brief moment, silence filled the air. Passing drivers slowed down, curious eyes catching a glimpse of the unfolding drama. Daniels puffed up his chest, loving the attention. To him, this was power, a public display of control. Hill, however, didn't move. Instead, he folded his hands on the steering wheel. "Respectfully, unless you can state a lawful reason, I'm not stepping out of this vehicle." Daniels's face flushed, red. "You think you're smarter than me, huh? Guys like you always have an excuse, always an attitude. Beat one." An open insult. Judge Hill remained composed. "Officer, I suggest you run that license properly. You may discover something that changes your approach." But Daniels waved the ID like it was a meaningless card. "I don't need to run anything. I know what I see." B2. The arrogance of ignoring the truth sitting in his hand. The tension grew thicker by the second. A couple walking their dog stopped nearby, whispering to each other as they watched. The scene was no longer private. It was turning into a spectacle. Daniels, feeling the pressure of eyes on him, raised his voice. "Last warning, get out now, or I'll escalate this." His hand hovered near his taser, not yet drawn, but threatening enough to send a chill. Beat 3. A dangerous escalation. Inside the car, Judge Hill's patience was thinning, not because he was afraid, but because he understood exactly how far this could go. And he knew one simple truth. Daniels had no idea who he was dealing with. Hill took a slow breath. His next words were deliberate, carrying weight heavier than any badge. "Officer, I strongly recommend you check that name. Again, because the mistake you're about to make could cost you more than just embarrassment." Daniels chuckled, shaking his head as if he'd already won the standoff. "You talk big, but out here it's my word against yours. Nobody cares who you are." Judge Hill studied him silently, letting those words hang in the air. He could see the arrogance swelling in Daniels, the same arrogance he had seen countless times from defendants who thought they were untouchable. But this time, the arrogance wasn't in a courtroom. It was standing just inches from his car door. A small crowd was forming now, neighbors peeking from porches, drivers slowing down to record on their phones. The pressure was shifting, but Daniels didn't notice. He was too consumed by the illusion of power. Finally, Judge Hill leaned forward, his tone calm but cutting. "Officer, once again I advise you check that license, because if you proceed without doing so, the consequences will not just be personal, they will be professional." Daniels scoffed, waving the license dismissively. "Professional consequences, please. You're just another guy trying to bluff his way out of trouble." But then, beat. A subtle change. One of the bystanders whispered, "Wait, isn't that Judge Hill? I've seen him on the news." Daniels froze for half a second, the name echoing in his head. Slowly, his eyes flicked down to the license still in his grip. For the first time, he actually read it. His smirk began to falter. Marcus Hill, Superior Court Judge. The color drained from Daniels's face. His bravado cracked. He realized in an instant that he hadn't just pulled over a random driver. He had tried to intimidate a man who held the power to review cases, including those involving officers like him. Judge Hill noticed the shift. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply watched the officer's confidence unravel. The crowd sensed something was different now. Phones lifted higher, recording every second, and then Hill spoke just 7 words that changed everything. "Do you really want to continue this?" The officer's hand slipped away from his taser. The air went silent, heavy, waiting for his next move. But what happened next was something no one expected. For the first time since the stop began, Officer Daniels hesitated. His bravado drained away, replaced by a flicker of unease. The murmurs of the onlookers grew louder. A few people now held their phones high, capturing every frame of this standoff. Daniels knew it. If he made one wrong move, the internet would turn this moment into his career's downfall. Judge Hill remained still in the driver's seat, calm as ever. His words had been few, but their weight was undeniable. "Do you really want to continue this?" Was not a threat. It was a lifeline, an opportunity for Daniels to step back before plunging further. Daniels cleared his throat, forcing a shaky laugh. Well, Judge Hill, I didn't realize—" The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "Stop! This isn't about realizing who I am. This is about why you stopped me in the first place." His eyes locked on Daniels with the same piercing intensity that once silenced noisy courtrooms. No broken laws, no legitimate suspicion, only bias. The crowd murmured in agreement, a low rumble of disapproval. Daniels' face burned crimson as the spotlight of truth bore down on him. Still desperate, Daniels stammered, I thought your car matched a description. Just routine, you know." Judge Hill shook his head slowly. "Routine doesn't involve intimidation. Routine doesn't involve insults. Routine doesn't involve demanding a citizen step out of their vehicle without cause. This wasn't routine, officer. This was profiling. And I lived it, just like so many others who stood in my courtroom telling their stories. Beat one, the truth laid bare." Daniels shifted nervously. His hand no longer touched his belt. His shoulders slumped. "Judge Hill, I made a mistake, a serious mistake." The judge leaned forward, his voice dropping to a measured, deliberate tone. "And now, the question is, what will you do about it?" Beat two, turning the tables. The silence stretched, all eyes locked on the officer. Daniels swallowed hard, realizing the weight of his choice. Slowly, almost mechanically, he straightened his stance and extended the license back toward the judge. Here's your license back, sir. You're free to go." Judge Hill took the card, but didn't drive off. He kept the moment hanging. "No, officer. I'm not just free to go. You're free to learn, because this won't be forgotten. Not by me, not by the people here, and not by the department once I report this stop." Beat 3. The gavel without the courtroom. Daniels's lips trembled. He wanted to argue, but the weight of witnesses, recordings, and the unmistakable truth held him silent. His career wasn't destroyed, yet. But the fear of accountability gnawed at him. Finally, Judge Hill started his engine. He gave one last look at Daniels, not of anger, but of stern clarity. "The law is not your weapon, it's your duty. Remember that, before the next person you stop doesn't have the platform to fight back." With that, the sedan pulled away, leaving Daniels standing alone, swallowed by the eyes of a watching crowd and the buzzing thought of consequences to come. The officer's regret wasn't just instant, it was permanent. As Judge Hill drove away, his heart was steady, not with anger but with resolve. What had just happened wasn't about one man and one officer. It was about a system that still allowed bias to sneak into everyday life, even in the simplest of places. A quiet road on an ordinary afternoon. The officer had learned a painful lesson in front of a crowd, but the true lesson wasn't just for him. It was for everyone watching and for everyone listening now. Because here's the truth. Authority is not power. Authority is responsibility. A badge doesn't give permission to intimidate. It gives the duty to protect. And when that duty is twisted by prejudice, justice itself is mocked. Judge Hill's calm resistance was proof that standing firm with dignity can expose the truth louder than any shout or fight. But there's also another side to this story. Not everyone has the privilege of being a judge when moments like this happen. Many people stopped unfairly, don't have witnesses, don't have the confidence to challenge authority, and don't have a system that will always listen. That's why this moment matters. It's a reminder that accountability must exist for all, not just when the powerful are involved. So what's the moral? Simple but powerful. True justice is blind, but prejudice never is. And the only way to fight prejudice is with courage, truth, and the unwavering belief that dignity is worth defending, no matter who you are. As the judge's car faded into the distance, one thought lingered. If an officer can treat a judge this way, imagine how he might treat someone with no voice, no platform, no protection. That thought alone should be enough to demand change. And that brings us here to you, the listener. Stories like this remind us of the importance of awareness, accountability, and speaking up. They aren't just stories. They're lessons wrapped in real experiences that reflect the world we live in. If this story moved you, if it made you think twice about fairness, or if it reminded you that dignity matters, then don't let it stop here. Share it. Let others hear it. And if you want more stories that reveal truth, justice, and the battles that shape everyday lives, make sure you subscribe and join this community, because sometimes the most powerful gavel isn't struck in a courtroom. It's struck in the choices we make, the voices we raise, and the lessons we carry forward. So remember this: power can intimidate, but truth endures. And the next time you witness injustice, you'll know silence is never the answer. Stay strong, stay aware, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that matter.